The story of Yosef and his brothers is probably one of the most dramatic stories in the entire Torah. And from that story, there is a practical lesson that we can apply to our lives. But in order to really glean that lesson, we have to answer an overarching question. And that is, here's Yosef, who was taken away, sent down to Mitzrayim as a slave, then imprisoned in Mitzrayim, didn't have any hope. All of a sudden, within a short period of time, brought in front of Paro. Paro gives him a ring and says to him, Yosef, no one will speak back to you. You are second in command. The only one you have to answer to is me. You have the power to do virtually anything that you want in Mitzrayim. And when Yosef had all this power, one thing he did not do was send a message to his father that he was alive. And the question, of course, is, why? Yosef's brothers come down to Mitzrayim and they're seeking food, and Yosef gives them a very hard time. He accuses them of being spies, and he asks them very difficult questions. And they tried to answer, but he kept on pushing and said, no, you're spies, you're spies. And he hears them speaking with regret about what happened to him, but speaking in Hebrew, and they didn't know that he understood Hebrew. They thought he only spoke Egyptian. And Yosef continues to ask them and give them a hard time. He imprisons Shimon, and he says to them, the only way that he will ever give them food and let Shimon out of jail is if Binyamin comes down to Mitzrayim. Yosef knows this is going to be difficult for his father. Why doesn't he just reveal who he is to his brothers right away? And so we're told, no, Yosef wanted his brothers to bow down to him in fulfillment of the dreams that he had, which seems like so long ago, when he was 17 years old, as we read in last week's Parsha. And now, here we are, 13 years later, at the age of 30, Yosef is sitting as the ruler and still waiting for his brothers to bow down to him. Is that a good enough excuse not to tell his father that he was still alive? So the Kedushas Levi, Schuso Yagin Aleinu, explains as follows. He says, here's the real story as to why Yosef didn't tell his father and why he didn't reveal right away to his brothers who he was. He needed to fulfill those dreams because he had those dreams at a time where he felt that they were nevuah, on some level of prophecy. So Hashem wanted those dreams fulfilled. And Yosef said, if I tell everyone that I am Yosef before my brothers bow down to me, then my brothers will have a sense of sadness in that the argument that they had with me, this constant bickering and bitterness we had between each other, they will feel that they lost, and therefore they have to put themselves in a position in which they are submissive to me and bow down to me in order for my dreams to be fulfilled. Well, you say, isn't that what happened? Says the Kedushas Levi, no. When the brothers ended up bowing down to Yosef, yes, it was Yosef they bowed down to, but they thought they were just bowing down to a king in Egypt. They had no idea it was really Yosef. So they themselves really didn't feel that they were belittled by virtue of having to bow down to this king in Egypt. They thought it was natural and normal. The king in Egypt was really Yosef. But the brothers were able on some level to keep their dignity because Yosef did not reveal himself. And what a lesson in the life for us. When we have someone who hurts us or makes a mistake and says something in one way and they argue with us and it turns out that they're wrong, do we put them in a position in which they have to feel belittled by telling us, by saying something to us, by admitting to us that they were wrong? Or do we simply allow them to preserve their dignity when admitting that they are wrong and perhaps even apologizing for that which they did? Yosef had grown from the age of 17. He developed into a different person. And as much as he wanted his dreams to be fulfilled, he still cared for his brothers and still had a sense of rachamim, a sense of mercy, that he didn't want them to suffer as he suffered at their hands. Yosef wasn't interested in taking revenge, and we see that throughout the next couple of parshas. Yosef was only interested in hoping and seeing and fulfilling a bright future for his family and ultimately for the Jewish people. May we learn this lesson from Yosef. And as conflict happens in life, may we think of Yosef and the tremendous midah that he had, that even when he won, that even when he was victorious, he had no desire to belittle those who he was victorious over. May we apply that to our lives as well. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.